Sometimes life's burdens can take their toll on your emotional well-being. If you or a loved one is struggling, know that you are not alone. South Texas Health System Behavioral can help you cope with depression, manage feelings of anxiety, regain control of mood swings, and recover from substance use disorders. Our staff is available 24/7, offering the quality and compassionate inpatient and outpatient care you need to overcome life's challenges. South Texas Health System Behavioral, where your mental health is our priority. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. Welcome to our first Let's Talk Mental Health webinar of 2024. I'm Tom Castañeda, the System Director of Marketing and Public Relations for South Texas Health System. On behalf of STHS Behavioral, thank you for joining us for this webinar. STHS Behavioral is dedicated to providing important mental education through these Let's Talk webinars with one goal in mind: breaking the stigma surrounding mental health in our communities. Through these talks, which offer expert insights on common mental health conditions, hopefully more community members will feel empowered to open up about their own mental health challenges and get treatment if necessary. In this installment, we'll be focusing on overcoming negative behaviors. Now, the new year is a time when many people resolve to shed old, unhealthy habits, but healthy habits go beyond the physical. How you feel mentally can affect your ability to perform daily tasks, your relationships with others, and your overall mental health. In fact, there are a lot of habits that people slip into that aren't conducive to positive mental health. Health experts say any behavior that has a negative effect on the way you think or feel about yourself is a bad habit you need to overcome. So how can we break old habits and retrain our brains to help us maintain optimal mental health? Well, today we're joined by Roxanne Ramirez, a licensed clinical social worker supervisor and the executive director of the Hope Family Health Center and the founder of the Healing Center, with the answers to those important questions and more. Roxanne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, this is the first time that we have you on, and I'm just surprised that we haven't had you here before. We're so excited to have you here.
I am so excited. I can't believe that you've been doing this for 4 years, and I am just now kicking in the new year with the right foot forward and excited to share with the community.
And this is really an important topic because during the new year, a lot of people make those resolutions. They resolve to do A, B, and C. And a lot of that is exercising, it's losing weight, it's eating healthy. But mental health is something that we really should be prioritizing as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think, it's in the losing weight aspect, it's losing weight of the past, losing weight of what you've been carrying, that baggage from the past, that doesn't fully let you enjoy the journey that you're supposed to enjoy. So I'm excited for today's topic. I'm excited for the interaction that there will be with those that are viewing right now and the questions that there may be out there as far as what can I do? We speak it, we say it, we read the books, but at the end of the day, it's what do I do about it?
Mm-hmm. Now, there are a lot of negative habits that people have, that some of them obviously mental health related, like biting your nails could be that maybe you're dealing with stress or anxiety in a way that may not be the most positive way to work with, especially when we start getting into like self-harm and things like that. What is the most common one that you see in your practice? Are there any kind of bad habits that you kind of see locally?
I think that probably the most prevalent is anxiety induced. And it's so important, I think, to highlight the fact that none of these are meant to quote unquote destroy. All of the symptoms that we see, whether it be nail biting, pulling of the hair, obsessive rumination, they're all strategies that the brain creates as a way to protect. Mm-hmm. So it's important not to villainize that which we do as a coping mechanism, because the thing is that typically when we're doing that, it's because we don't know that there's an alternative. Mm-hmm. And that's where this education is so important, because if there is somebody out there that maybe's already labeled themselves, and I have so many clients that come in and say, I don't want to be crazy, mm-hmm. that word, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to be crazy, and this behavior is going to demonstrate or prove that, as a matter of fact, I am. That's where I say it's important that you not take ownership of the fact that your brain simply developed these mechanisms as a way to protect you. That's how smart it is. So where we come in is we begin to facilitate other ways to begin to replace behavior. We can't just eliminate it, we have to replace it.
So replacing it with a positive. So something that might be negative, just sort of switching it over to something a little more positive.
Exactly. And you mentioned what's most prevalent. Anxiety is probably the most prevalent, because I tell my clients, people who live with depression are living with the pain of the past, and people who are living with anxiety are living with the fear of an unknown future.
Okay.
Right? So what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? This paranoia that kicks in when we don't know, that fear of an unknown future, we don't know what's going to happen. The reality is that none of us do. But what happens at that point, we begin to create all of these stories, right? We begin to connect all the dots of how this story is going to become true. And then by the time we know it, we focused on it so much that we begin to see that it's, as a matter of fact, self-fulfilling prophecy in place. And then we say, I knew that was going to happen.
But you sort of cultivated it and made it happen.
Exactly. We created the story. And then we confirm it. And then we say, nothing good ever happens to me. And we go right back to square one, depression. Right.
So it's making sure that you're sort of realizing what those habits are and just bringing in a positive change for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now anxiety, you mentioned, is something that you see often. 3 years ago, we were going through the pandemic, and it was a really time of unknown for everyone, not just locally, but globally, like everyone. So did you see an increase during that time of more people dealing with anxiety, calling you for appointments to try to figure out because of that fear of the unknown?
Such an interesting question, because what I saw, and you know, this is my observation with the clients that I worked with, was that those clients that were already with symptoms of depression or anxiety, they actually did pretty good. They were used to living this way. The clients that now came on board were clients that typically keep themselves very busy all the time, right? People who are very successful, people who are used to being on task and on schedule, and I need to be here and I need to be there and socialize and distract. Those are the individuals that began to walk through the door. Why? Because there was no means for distraction, right?
The world stopped.
We learn to use our protective mechanisms, and for those of us that become successful because of it, well, it's because we've simply learned it and curated it well enough that we became successful. However, when the world stops, what do you do at that point?
Exactly. You're left with your own thoughts.
Exactly.
And that's when it
and there's
can take
nowhere
hold.
to run away.
Yeah.
Right? So that's when the anxiety comes to the surface. And many people are so afraid of looking inward, so they begin to look outward into everything that's going on in the world. And it increases fear, paranoia, obsessive compulsive disorder, inability to sleep, the body shuts down, gastric system goes out, and it's a ripple effect into this chaotic internal environment.
And that's why
Does that make
it's
sense?
so important to be paying attention to it from the beginning, because of that ripple effect that you do see.
Yes.
And so today we are retraining our brains.
Yes.
We're going to change our behaviors, and you have a great presentation for us, right?
Well, that is my hope, that you will take it and that you will implement whatever works for you. Not everything works for everybody, but something will work for you if you choose to look inward. So that is my hope for you today. Like I was mentioning to you earlier, habits are simply a belief. That's all it is. It's a belief that you have about yourself. So as we go into this space, first and foremost, it's an opportunity to really give yourself grace. And that's really what I would like to extend to you. That if you typically are looking outward and looking at every single way in which you are flawed or in which things don't go well for you, that today, at least for this point of time, that you just be present with you and that you make this time about you. So put away the distractions and let's focus on what you have in store for this 2024. So as I mentioned, today we're going into habits, right? Habits are beliefs that we hold to be true about ourselves. Oftentimes we say new year, same new year, new me. But what happens when it's a new year, same you? And that's oftentimes where we set ourselves up for really for destruction. And in this case, it's like a mental destruction, because those of us that set goals for ourselves in 2023, and October, November, December starts to come around and we realize that none of those goals were met, we tend to go back into a space of depression, becoming that self-critic, saying I'm never going to do things right, and here I go again, and another year with the same pattern. So it's really important that if this is something that you're going to choose to focus on, that you begin to contemplate the fact that something has to change. Nothing changes unless something changes. And the only thing that you have the power to change is yourself. So here I go back to what I just mentioned to you just a bit ago, Tom, the story that we create. The brain is so wise in helping us to create stories. As a matter of fact, you walk into a store and somebody's looking at you, and if they look at you in a certain way, you're immediately going to begin to imagine a story of why they're looking at you that way, right? And if you're not regulated, a lot of people will go into a fight mode. What are you looking at, right? And it begins to instigate behavior. So in this case, whatever life has become for you is typically because that's what you've already created. The result of subconscious beliefs are due to personal experiences. So whatever, many people, I have clients that come in and they say, I want to quote unquote fix myself, but don't take me back to my childhood. Well, I hate to break it, but the majority of the subconscious beliefs that we have are rooted in our childhood, right? Something happened where, granted, our parents did the best that they could with what they knew, but that might have not been what you needed in order to grow up to be a healthy individual with healthy attachment styles, secure attachment. So that often brings to mind two important components. I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy. Two belief systems that the majority of clients that I work with come with. It may be masked in some other way, but at the end of the day, it's I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. So with this, we're going to go into what is known as the law of polarization. In the law of polarization, we say, and this is actually an activity that I encourage for you at home or wherever it is that you are, that you actually do this for yourself. Because the story that you created, I'm going to venture to say that more than likely is already established. So on a piece of paper, I would like for you to just do a T right through the middle and write down all of those things that you say about yourself. I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm poor, I'm broke, I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted, I'm invisible, I'm damaged, I'm insignificant, you name it. Write down all of this list. At the end of the list, and this is something that I share with my clients, put a check mark next to each one of those things that you already are experiencing, you have experienced, or push comes to shove, you're on your way to that place. Then on the other side of the paper, what you're going to do is what is known as the law of polarization. If you wrote, I'm not good enough, on the other side you're going to put, I'm more than good enough. If you wrote, I'm unworthy, you're going to put, I'm worthy of all good things. If you put, I'm damaged, as a lot of my clients who have gone through extreme trauma, you're going to relabel that with, I am resilient. If you put, I'm ugly, I'm uniquely created. If you put insignificant, I'm made for purpose and on purpose. If you put, you're invisible, you're going to write, I'm seen, heard, and understood. Those three last elements, I am seen, I'm heard, and understood, are the three things that all human beings need to know. We need to know that we are worthy of being seen, we're worthy of being heard, and we're worthy of being understood. And when those three elements are not met, what happens is that people begin to feel that they're invisible, that nobody hears them, and that they're misunderstood by the world. And that brings upon depression, it brings upon anxiety, and a whole plethora of other mental health symptoms. So, now that you've done this, what you're going to begin to do is you're going to begin to focus on this other end. Because if theory serves me correct, you have already concluded that everything that you currently have said about yourself to be true, you've already perfected it. You already believe all of these negative elements about yourself. Now we're going to begin to change the belief so that we can change the habit. Does that make sense, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, if you have any questions, just begin to think about these questions as we continue with the presentation. So, happiness is an inside job. When you take responsibility for your emotions, both positive and negative, you finally take charge of your life. I think this is so important because taking responsibility requires for us to do an inward investigation, not an outward investigation. Did you know that the life cycle of an emotion is roughly 90 seconds? In other words, from the moment that you feel it, it takes 90 seconds for that emotion to dissipate, to be gone. If we don't hook onto the emotion, it will leave our system in 90 seconds. The problem is that we grab onto the emotion, we give life to that emotion, and then we become an outcome of behavior because of the emotion that we felt. So I'll give you an example. I have a lot of people that come in and say, well, it's because she got me mad or he got me mad. And here we go back to the quote, when we take responsibility. The moment we say he or she or they, whatever it may be, got me mad, we are displacing responsibility. In other words, we're not being accountable for the fact that I made a conscious choice to become angry, right? So becoming accountable is one of the first steps to changing our habits. Like I said, if we hold on to the emotion, we're going to justify by displacing or projecting outward and therefore not be accountable. And if you're not accountable, nothing is going to change. So any of those New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals, if there's no accountability on your behalf, you're going to find yourself once again at the end of this year producing the same outcomes where nothing really would have changed. Now here on this figure, we see thoughts, feelings, and behavior. This is what we know as cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT therapy. We have a thought, the thought produces a feeling, and the feeling produces a behavior. So going back to the list that we have as far as the I am statements, if we say I am not good enough, if that's our thought, if that's our belief, how is it going to make us feel? Typically, somebody that's thinking or feeling that they're not good enough is going to feel like they're not worthy of good things. And if you feel that you're not worthy of good things, then it's going to show up for you through a low self-esteem, through not having expectations for something good for your life, through broken relationships because you're constantly in a phase of distrust, believing that nobody could, should, or would be trusted, when in reality, the one that doesn't really know how to trust themselves is you. You don't feel with the confidence that you have the capacity to make good choices and to produce a good outcome for yourself. So, we go on here to say, well, what does science say? And here, if you heard me talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy, I would like to put into action what the self-fulfilling prophecy really is. And this really is what the reticular activated system does for our body, for our brain. So the reticular activated system, what it is, it's a very primitive part of our brain. As a matter of fact, it's so primitive that a lot of the times when we have a lot of thoughts, that we're constantly ruminating on thoughts, we will typically put our head right behind the base of our skull and we'll massage that part and we'll say, oh, my head hurts. We feel the tension and we feel the pressure right back here. Well, surprise, surprise, that's where the reticular activated system is. What does this place do? Like I said, it's very primitive. right? The prefrontal cortex, which is the most executive functioning part of our brain, where we think, where we logic, where we reason, where we make good decisions, where healthy habits are, is up here. But the reticular activated system is one of the first parts of the brain that begins to filter out what we see. Now, reticular, what is a reticular? When you think of reticular, what do you think of? The retina, right?
The eyes.
The eyes. Reticular means that we see first, not through our eyes, but through our brain. And I'll give you an example. Have you ever purchased a brand new vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, so give me the make, model of that vehicle.
Make Volvo XC60.
What color?
Silver gray.
Okay, so you get out from that dealership, and what do you begin to see all over the place?
Other cars in the same color.
And the same color, exactly.
Or the same style.
Exactly. Because what the reticular activated system, and I want for you to kind of think of it as a sifter. You know what a sifter is,
Yes.
right? So a sifter is responsible for keeping certain elements up here, and then it gives us what we are searching for, right? So the moment that you went and you purchased that gray Volvo, what happened is that in your reticular activated system, there was a story that was created. And now your brain is looking to see how is it going to make that story true for you. So by putting all of these vehicles that are silver Volvos all over the place, it's not that they were all just put out there immediately. No, they were all already there. But you were not searching for it.
Yes.
Right? So what happens is, that's kind of as simple as I can explain it to my clients because it makes sense. What happens is that the moment that we say to ourselves, I'm not good enough, our reticular activated system is going to begin to expand what we are focused on. So we are focused on, I'm not good enough. Guess what our brain, our retina, is literally looking for? For that opportunity for somebody to treat you in a rude manner, for you to be bypassed on the promotion, for somebody else to look prettier than you in the outfit, for whatever it may be, that's gonna prove to your brain that as a matter of fact, you're not good enough. That's as simple as it gets. And it's crazy when I say this to my clients because then they look at me with this face and they're dumbfounded and they say, you mean I've created this? Well, I hate to break it to you, but yes, we have created for the most primitive part of our brain to do what we are asking for it to do. That is why it's so important to begin to focus on that law of polarization. Because if you now begin to say to yourself, I am worthy, what your reticular activated system now begins to do is give you opportunities for somebody to be nice and kind to you, for somebody to give you words of affirmation if that's your love language, for things to begin to shift because now your focus is on this other end. And here, a lot of people will say, but that's not actually happening to me. That's a lie, right? And as the new year begins, what we see is that a lot of people are doing vision boards, right? And we'll get to that in just a bit for you all. But in this vision board, you can imagine it all you want. You can envision it all you want. You can write it down all you want. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe that that is something that you deserve, likely it won't happen for you. There has to be a component of belief. So you begin to speak it in faith as if it were already happening. But there has to be a space in your brain. And this is where it's so important, and a lot of clients become very discouraged when they hear words of affirmation and they put the little Post-its all over the place and they're telling themselves, I'm beautiful, I'm worthy, I'm this, I'm that, but at the end of the day, nothing's changing for them. And they come in hopeless. And the thing here is that there is no belief in those words. So what do I encourage for you to do if that is the person that right now is listening to this, is for you to go through this Rolodex of memories that we have in our brain. And if you've seen the movie Inside Out, you know that there's all of these clusters of memories in our brain, right? That's actually true. And what I encourage my clients to do is to go back to a memory where they felt worthy. It could be in kinder, a teacher gave you a pencil, and maybe it was one of those pencils that smells good and you felt like, oh my goodness, I'm special. It may be a CCE teacher. It may be a Sunday school teacher. It may be somebody along your path. It may be your pet that got so happy the moment that you walked through the door when you've been having a really, really bad day. But for a moment in time, for a couple of seconds, there is a memory in your brain that felt that you were worthy of something good. Like I said, it could be the Pizza Hut little coupons that we would receive in school when we had done something right. It could be absolutely anything. But in that moment, there is a good memory in your brain. Then at that point, once you feel what that memory felt like, you attach the affirmation onto it. Because now your brain actually knows that at some point in time, you've actually felt worthy. Mm-hmm. And that's important in order for us to move forward. Does that make any sense?
No, total sense.
Okay, so if at any point something doesn't make sense, just write it down, and at some point you get to share that with me, with us. I often say to people, you can't hang around with the chickens and expect to be an eagle. And what does this mean? What happens when you throw corn on the ground and there's chickens? We get the term typically, I'm running around like a chicken without a head, right? Because the moment that there's a distraction, the moment that there's drama, the moment that there's gossip, everybody starts going, quote unquote, crazy with this one element, right? So chickens have feathers, just like an eagle does, but their composition is very, very different. An eagle typically will venture on its own, right? In other words, it has a confidence if we were to place it in human perspective. A chicken typically needs to know that there's affirmation, that somebody else is there to root you on, to be on your side, whatever it may be. The eagle, on the other hand, has the ability to focus and to have a clear definition of what the target is. And it will soar high even if it soars to such a point where to us it doesn't make any sense how they can go and catch whatever prey they're going to go and catch. But it does, because it's precision vision. It knows what it wants and it knows what it needs to do to get it. So in this case, this is where confidence and self-esteem comes in, right? I'll say this to my clients all the time. You can't hang around with the chickens and expect to be an eagle. You can't have all of these good outcomes and continue with the habits that have been bringing upon chaos and destruction over your life. So another important component is your attitude can actually alter your DNA. It's that powerful. We say often, especially around the month of November, we have to have an attitude of gratitude. And gratitude is one of those things that we minimize its efficacy. However, it's such an important component to actually boost our mood, not only physically, but also mentally. On here, you'll see an image as well, and this is the connection of the brain and the gut. And that connection, Dr. Besser van der Kolk, he says that the body keeps the score. Why do we say that? Because oftentimes we find that people will go to the doctor because they're having gastrointestinal problems. Typically, that's where it starts. And what they don't know is that the stomach, the digestive system, is literally trying to process what in your brain you're not processing, right? So before, this used to be first brain, second brain. Now there's a lot of research that says that the gut's the first brain, brain is second brain. Whatever it may be, both of them have to be in good communication. Otherwise, the body is going to break down at some point. when I mentioned to you about COVID and how a lot of people that were very successful and they had perfected this schema for what victory looks like for them, a lot of them actually begin to feel physical manifestations of illness. So maybe they were experiencing constipation. I tell people, a lot of people that are experiencing constipation are holding on to the past. And a lot of people that are experiencing a lot of symptoms of diarrhea are people that are like, I'm not going to worry about it. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And your body, ironically, begins to manifest it as well. So it's super important for you to be very aware of what your body is speaking, because unless you are aware of it, you can't really do anything to change it. So now we're moving into the part of actually changing your habits and leading you into what a vision board is going to look like for you. So it's a 4-step process, and this is something that I like to guide my clients through. And the first step is going to be to title your own story. Each one of us is a book worth reading. And my goal for any client, any person that I come across is that they have a book that is actually worth reading. That they would actually want to pick it up and anticipate what that end of the story is going to look like for them. And it's going to be one that they're really, really proud of. So you're going to title your story, and I'm going to guide you through this. Then what I have my clients do is 3 goals, and they're going to be realistic, but at the same time, it's going to be something that's challenging and that you would have grown through the process. We don't just go through it, we grow through it. So the first goal is going to be a short-term goal. It's going to be a goal that by the first quarter, you're going to say, you know what, okay, I've checked that one off the list. So this is going to be from here until March. What is a short-term goal that you have for yourself? Then we're going to focus on an intermediate goal, so from here until July, and then a long-term goal from here until the end of the year. You're going to think of these 3 goals, and then you're going to go into step 2, which is envision it. The reticular activated system is a place where we envision things. As a matter of fact, it's so powerful that we can actually see the telenovela in our brain as it's unfolding. This whole story, as it unfolds, we can see it actually happening play by play. So in this part of envisioning, you're going to envision, but you're going to do it for something good, because you got to remember that you're worthy of good things. So you're going to select images that will confirm your vision to be true. That which you wrote out, you're going to select elements that are going to confirm those 3 goals to be true. Like I said, we want to be realistic and we want to dream big. If you're not dreaming big enough, then you're not really dreaming. Step 3 is going to be, like I mentioned earlier, to find a memory that you have experienced where you did feel worthy. And that is super, super, super important, because I cannot reiterate, if you don't believe in yourself, you do not have the capacity to change your habits. It just will not happen for you. And if it does, it's because there's a high level of codependency where you are relying on somebody else to be the source of your joy, the source of your happiness. But at the moment that that source is disconnected, you go right back to step 1. You're going to anchor your affirmation to the feeling of that memory. And we got to remember that we cannot receive what we do not believe we are worthy of. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but by the end of today, you're going to know that if you don't believe in you, something's got to change. Then step 4, and this is the most important one, is we have to learn how to receive it. We have to allow energy to flow downstream. And here I'm going to sing to you, but I'm not accepting contracts. So there's this little song that we typically sing to children, and they were sung, it's a song that was sang to us. And you're going to help me with this, Tom.
Okay.
So the song says, row, row, row your boat.
Gently down the stream.
Gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily.
Life is but a dream.
Right? So row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Think about the lyrics to that song. First and foremost, you row your boat. It's not telling you to go and row somebody else's boat, right? Stay in your lane.
Okay.
The art of comparison has a capacity to bring any of us down. There's always going to be somebody else better than us.
That boat is better than my boat.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Just
right?
stay in your boat.
Stay in your lane, stay in your boat. Second component is it's telling us to row it down the stream. In other words, there's no resistance. It's not telling us to do what we typically do, which is to go up the stream, right? We want to become a koi fish.
Yes.
The koi fish becomes beautiful because it's constantly going up the stream, but that's not what life is like for us. For us, when we allow ourselves to just like literally release and receive, things begin to actually flow our way. When we become frustrated is when we're constantly on resistant mode. In other words, and I actually love it when people are in a resistant mode, because what that says is what you are currently receiving is in total conflict with what a part of you believes you're worthy of. So that is telling you, I don't want this. In other words, there's a part of you that actually knows that there's something else. Otherwise, we would be completely okay with what we're receiving, right? So that conflict creates an upstream battle. And it doesn't allow us for us to just let go and receive. That fourth element, receive it, is us going down the stream. As you're going down the stream, you end up stepping into places where you allow yourself more grace, where you allow yourself to have fun, where you do self-care, where your self-esteem begins to improve because you're no longer comparing yourself to everybody else. Now you're comparing yourself to who you used to be. And that in and of itself is going to help you to feel better. And in that process, as you're allowing yourself to experience gratitude and joy, the reticular activated system is simply going to allow for more of those things to come your way. So you go down the stream, and then it says, merrily, 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 life is but a dream, right? In other words, this is a life that we dream about, and we finally are being able to see that come to fruition. Now, here I do want to kind of give a disclaimer, because oftentimes, and do you know that there was actually a study in Harvard that was done where people's greatest fear is what? Can you guess?
Failure?
That's a good one, but no.
Ending up alone?
That's a really good one too. So people's biggest fear is happiness.
Oh, wow.
The moment that we feel happy, what happens is that all of our fear indicators kick in, and we begin to think something bad's going to happen.
The shoe's going to drop.
It's just a matter of time. This never happens to me. So what does our reticular activated system once again go and do?
Start looking for all those negative things.
Exactly. Oh, you're such a good student. So that's exactly what ends up happening. So here is where, once again, we have to be really, really mindful that the moment that those fear indicators begin to come up, first and foremost, our brain is simply trying to go back to its homeostasis. In other words, it knows how to live in fear, it knows how to live in depression, it knows how to live in anxiety, and it wants to go right back to a place of comfort.
It doesn't know how to live in happiness.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
The majority of the people do not know how to live in happiness. So when those fear indicators kick in, there is where the awareness is super important. You have to find out how does your body speak it to you? For a lot of people, it's like a gut sensation. I just feel it in my gut, something's gonna happen, right? And when that happens, you acknowledge this is normal because it's trying to take me to a place that I'm trying to get out from. That was a temporary home, not a permanent residence. So now I simply continue with gratitude, continue going down the stream, and that will continue to bring you the results that ultimately you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Oh, something's not going to make sense. So at some point, and that's my reticular activated system, looking for something not to make sense. You see? So this is what ultimately we want to look for. And this is a vision board, and I want to encourage for you at home to actually do this for yourself. So first step is going to be to title your own board, right? So Victorious 2024, my story, my life journey, whatever you want to call it. The second component is going to be your 3 goals, your short-term goal, intermediate goal, and long-term goal. Your third component is going to be to add the images that confirm those 3 goals to be true. You can add words, you can add visualization, and then once you've done this, place it in a space, whether it's your restroom, your closet, somewhere where it's safe for you, where you can now begin to use those I am statements that we talked about with the law of polarization, but you're going to begin to speak it as if it was already happening for you. So for example, if I'll focus on the abundance one, because a lot of people right now are with the thought of I'm broke, but they want to be financially well. So if your thought is that your goal for this year, one of your goals is going to be an increase in wealth, and that could be financial, it could be health, it could be whatever. But what I want to encourage you is for you to begin to say, I am abundant. You begin to speak it as if it was already happening. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you have a desire to work on yourself so that you can get into a healthy relationship. And that's something that you really do desire. So I am in a healthy relationship. Not I want, but I am. Let's say that you want to travel. Begin to mark where those places are, and you begin to say to yourself, I'm enjoying this life with increased travel. I'm experiencing new places. I'm gaining adventure. I'm whatever it may be. So you get the drift. I'm already healthy. I'm already eating healthy. And what's going to happen is your brain is going to find a way to make things become a reality for you, simply because it's coming from a place where you're focused on a belief system that you're actually worthy of it, and you're already speaking it in faith as if it was yours. Then after you've done that, you go on downstream, down the flow, and you begin to do things that actually bring you joy. Mm-hmm. So if it's hiking or going to the movies or just sitting outside in nature, listening to birds, it could be anything that to you makes you feel grateful for where you're at. That's going to be the final component. So that's component number 4. You're going to actually go into a space where you're enjoying life as you release and receive. And that's what I would like to leave with everybody. Release and receive.
Release and receive. Mm-hmm. Wow. It's pretty crazy to think about. Now, I know you were talking about the story we create. It's pretty interesting that it really all comes down to the story that we create for ourselves. And that can go way back. You say a lot of it is from our childhood, right? Is that what you find in most cases, that story started, that kernel of that story started way when we were little?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, when we are working with clients, the majority of our behavior by the age of 2, it has already been really set. And by the age of 7, it's already been it's a foundational aspect of the way we see ourselves, mm-hmm. right? So if as a child, we were not fed on time, we were not nurtured, we were not cared for, maybe there was negligence, maybe there was abuse, the patterns in the brain, as a matter of fact, even prior to mm-hmm. birth, even in the womb. And as a matter of fact, I had a client that I was able to do EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. And this client initially told me that all her life, she had needed to sleep with a nightlight on.
Okay.
She didn't know why, but all her life she was terrified of being in the dark. There had to be some sort of light. So in the process of doing EMDR, and EMDR it's a type of therapy where we process through eye movement, because that's what the brain naturally does when we go to sleep. If you pay attention, people's eyes typically start going side to side, right? It's an involuntary movement where all of the experiences of that day are really like cataloged in our brain. So if you were rejected, there's a catalog for rejection. If you feel neglected, there's a catalog for neglect. If you felt grateful, there's a catalog for gratitude. Everything is sorted.
And your processor is just putting it all together.
Exactly. It just, like clockwork, it knows how to do it. So for this particular client, what ended up coming out for her was that in the womb, her mother would be physically abused by the father. So there was instances where her mother would be on the floor and she was already with the baby in the womb, and the dad would be hitting the belly. So even in the womb, she learned that the darkness was a place that was not safe. No amount of therapy would have helped us to get to that point if it wasn't because there's so many connections in the brain where she was able to go to that initial memory, right? That's how powerful therapy can be. So the moment that she was able to gain insight of that and to create safety for herself, slowly her victory became when she finally came into session and said, for the first time in my life, I slept without a nightlight on. And that for her was for me, it was a huge victory,
that's
right?
a big win.
Exactly. So here, that's the whole concept. The whole concept is that we begin to work through elements, but a lot of these elements come from childhood, right? I've had children that I've taken into the playroom, and the moment that they see toys, I had one client that told me, "Why would you do this to me?" Because for somebody that comes from a healthy childhood, I love to see toys.
Yeah.
But if you've been abused in that area of your life, naturally you're not going to want to go to that place because it's a place that brings a lot of pain, right? So we have a lot of children in adult bodies, right?
Yeah.
They're still regressing right back to the point of trauma, but they're an adult. And we see them and we often say to ourselves, like, why are they throwing a tantrum? Like literal adults that are stomping their feet, throwing a tantrum. Because in that moment, it's not the adult that is reacting. It's the child inside that is desperate to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So those are all those angry people on the plane are just having those tantrums, basically.
So anger is a face for depression. That's all it is. It's easier to protect ourselves through anger because nobody gets close, right?
They stay away from you.
Exactly. It's like, you know, and I can only revert back to what I say to my clients, right? They become porcupines. So on the inside, they're soft, but they close themselves off and they release all these needles. And those needles become the words, the actions that they go and inflict on somebody else, bringing harm to somebody else. In the meantime, they're protected, right?
Yeah.
So anger simply is the mask that people put on themselves in order to avoid vulnerability, because if I'm vulnerable, I may become hurt.
It's interesting that you mentioned the porcupine because when I was in college, we had this saying, it was ILAC, I-L-A-C, I am lovable and capable. And that all of us are basically lovable and capable. That's what we are born into this world believing, that we are lovable and capable, but then over time, because of whatever it may be, abuse or whatever, that gets chipped away. And so when you have a low ILAC, we used to say, is when you attack others. You try to take away their ILAC because the chicken mentality of like, if I can't be happy, you can't be happy. And so it's interesting that you say the porcupine that goes and shoots out all the negative stuff, because it's that you have to ultimately believe that you are lovable and capable and that everyone is lovable and capable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll go into porcupine mode And oftentimes in relationships, the porcupine is going to attract the turtle. So what does a turtle do? They're also soft on the inside, but the way that they protect themselves is through isolation, right? So they go back into their shell, they hide, they don't come out until little by little they begin to test the waters to see, is it safe for me to go back out there, right? So at the end of the day, what I tell my clients is ultimately we want to be like a giraffe. So giraffe, it has a very long neck, right? So its posture is very, very upright. That's a sign of a good, healthy self-esteem. But it also has the ability to observe what's going on underneath, right? So it doesn't just react, it observes everything that's going on, and in that process, it makes wise decisions.
Okay. So be a giraffe.
Yes.
All right. Now, you talked about the blame game and how being accountable for our own feelings. And so when we blame somebody, you made me mad. But it's really, you allow that person to make you mad. How important is it to realize that and let that go? Because I have this saying that I always say, and it's paso de ti. And that is, I just pass over you. Like, I'm not upset with you. I'm not happy. I'm not going to let it affect me. So I just pass over it.
Okay.
Like, it's like, you know what? You do you. I'm just going to pass over it. So how important is it to not allow people to cause you to react in a negative way?
And it's so interesting because you were going to say to not make you mad.
Yeah.
Because that's what we typically, immediately our thought goes there, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's, and I kind of look at it like a game of chess, right? It's either that person wins or it's either they advance or I advance, but somebody's going to advance in this game. And how does it feel to know that somebody else has so much power over us, right? At the moment that we recognize I am ceding my power to someone else, and kids can relate with this super well because I tell them, how does it feel to let your superpowers go? And they get upset about it. And they're like, no, I don't want to let my superpower, I don't want to give that up, because they know how important that is. So for us as adults, when we understand first and foremost how much power we have to remain in our own, to not allow anybody to, quote unquote, take away our peace. Because at some point in life, peace becomes a luxury that we no longer just want to release just to anybody, right? So when you understand the power that you have, you understand how important it is to cultivate that and to nurture it and to get to a place where your biggest power is understanding that I gave it away and I choose to take it back, right? And for a lot of clients, that's their victory. And also important, I think, is at no point in this conversation are we invalidating the fact that abuse does happen, that people do go through tough things, that if you are that person that has, experienced maybe sexual abuse or physical abuse or negligence, or you were abandoned, whatever it may be, first and foremost, you never deserved it. That was not your pain. That was somebody else inflicting pain upon your life. And unfortunately, at that time, you didn't have either the resource or you didn't have the people to protect you. But as the adult, you do have the capacity to learn to protect yourself and to learn to give to that inner child what that child always deserved. So at the point when healing begins to happen, it's also an understanding that I choose, post-traumatic growth is going from the pain to an actual purpose with what you're now living with, right? But that person, that abuser, the perpetrator, whoever it may be, they no longer have power over me. I chose to claim what was always mine. And that's when really they step in and they become empowered.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the bad behaviors that we see, some of the habits that we might have. So regret is something that we talk about a lot. Everyone experiences regret. Maybe you didn't take a job that you now are second guessing, or you made a decision that you didn't feel comfortable with. When does regret sort of become unhealthy? At what point do we really just need to let it go?
Okay, so first and foremost, at the point when it's impairing your current functioning, right? So if you're constantly obsessing and ruminating over that one event, if life just comes to a standstill for you, in other words, this is when people say, I feel stuck. They're not moving forward. Why are you not moving forward? Because you're still holding on to the past, right? So the should have, could have, would have, yeah, but it didn't. What do you do with it now? You learn, you pay attention. You know, every single lesson in life is there for a reason. There's something that you learned through the process. So you take inventory of, what did I learn? If it was because fear was holding you back and you didn't think that you were going to be able to, okay, now you understand that you were held back by your own fear. In other words, you didn't have the confidence in yourself to know that you were going to make the right decision. So we work on that. And we get ourselves unstuck so that way when an opportunity presents itself again, you don't make the same decision, because now you do better because you know better. Yeah. Right?
And you fight that fear.
Exactly. So that's where that regret or the guilt can, be counteracted.
Now, we talked about some of those body focused repetitive behaviors, like the pulling your hair or the biting your nails. What are the telltale signs that is becoming an issue, and is it masking something else? What do you think it's masking ultimately?
So for a lot of people, this is anxiety induced, right? So it's a self-soothing mechanism. Believe it or not, for us it may look like something that causes or inflicts pain. But in that moment, that person is trying to cope. And they don't know any alternate method for coping. And this is where, once again, it's super important that behavior is replaced, because when they are able to, at the moment they begin to pull, to pick, to bite, it's because a thought came into their mind that produced a feeling. Usually it's going to be, and there's a part in our brain, and I'm a fanatic about the brain. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is responsible for one of 4 behaviors. It goes into fight mode, physically, or like when you're trying to go to sleep and you're fighting your sleep. It goes into flight mode, where you literally run away from the situation, or where mentally you're no longer paying attention. You see the lips moving, but you've checked out. It goes into freeze mode, which could be physically, you're frozen, right? Like people that are in a hit and run and they just stayed still, and people say, how could they just stay still like that? Well, because they froze. Or people that physically or emotionally freeze, that they can't feel anything. This is very typical with teenagers. When we ask them, so how do you feel? And they're like, I don't know. Parents tend to get very aggravated and agitated, because the typical response is, what do you mean you don't know? They feel like they don't want to share, but the reality is that emotionally they're numb, they're frozen. And then the final one is fawn. Fawning behavior typically takes place, or what we call people-pleasing behavior, because it's coming from a place where we want to be accepted. We want to do things right. We want affirmation from our parents, or for them to tell us, good job. So we're constantly trying to please. So for the people that are in a flight mode, the moment that thought comes in, they felt something that reminded them of a pain that they've been running away from. And at the moment when they start to pick, to bite, to do any of those behaviors, it's because they have no awareness to the fact that I'm running away from this. So our job as a therapist is to slowly take them back to that place and to help them to lean into the situation, find an alternate behavior that they can now replace with, and now that's not necessary anymore.
And then ultimately, we talked about the 2 things, and it was that I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. So those are the 2 things that you need to remember. If you're experiencing a bad behavior, it might come down to one of those 2.
Absolutely.
More like 100% sure that it's one of those 2, do you think?
I would venture to say yes.
All right. And what is your key piece of advice then, if you were going to leave everyone with an important message? What would that be?
There is this quote that I like from Eleanor Roosevelt, and it says, "Nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent." The moment that you understand that you are worthy and that you are good enough, you no longer consent to being inferior. And that's what I want to leave you with. I want to leave you with the thought, as this year evolves, that you too have the capacity to evolve and to transform. And that choice is yours. Nobody can do it for you but you. And that's where your power lies.
And remember that you have to believe it to achieve it.
Absolutely.
You can do the vision board, you can have it all written out, but if you truly don't believe it in your core, it's not going to come true.
It's not going to happen.
So believe it and you will achieve it, as the saying says.
Believe it and receive it.
Right. Thank you so much, Roxanne. We really appreciate you taking time to speak with us today.
Thank you, and I pray that it will help.
All right. And that officially concludes our first webinar of 2024. Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll continue to prioritize your mental health and the mental health of your loved ones. Now, your mental health matters, and STHS Behavioral can help. The facility has served the South Texas community for more than 30 years, offering inpatient and outpatient treatment options, including the facility's recently launched chemical dependency unit. If you or a loved one is experiencing a mental health issue or dealing with substance use disorder, we encourage you to schedule a confidential assessment by calling our hotline at 388-1300. Remember, you are not alone. Don't hesitate to speak to a friend or seek professional help if you may need emotional or mental health support. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call the National Suicide and Crisis Line at 988. Licensed counselors are available to speak with you in English and Spanish 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Don't miss our next installment of this Let's Talk Mental Health series on Thursday, February 1st at 5:30 p.m. live via Facebook, where we'll be continuing to talk about anxiety disorder. We hope you can join us, and to watch our previous Let's Talk Mental Health webinars, simply visit sthsletstalk.com. Until our next webinar, stay healthy, stay safe, and please continue to prioritize your mental well-being. Sometimes life's burdens can take their toll on your emotional well-being. If you or a loved one is struggling, know that you are not alone. South Texas Health System Behavioral can help you cope with depression, manage feelings of anxiety, regain control of mood swings, and recover from substance use disorders. Our staff is available 24/7, offering the quality and compassionate inpatient and outpatient care you need to overcome life's challenges. South Texas Health System Behavioral, where your mental health is our priority.